the passion part needs to be the nucleus. So every day in and day out, every phone call, every email, all that always has to go back to what is that purpose? What is that why? What is your why?
This is Entrepreneurs the Playbook, where I give you access each week to the world's greatest athletes and executives about their personal and professional playbook and what has made them champions on and off the field. This is the Playbook. This is Dave Meltzer, CEO of Sports One Marketing, here with Entrepreneurs the Playbook. And I have the super female, not only racer, but entrepreneur, Leah Pritchett.
Well, thank you for having me in. This is awesome.
I am really enthused because before you, my favorite racer or driver was Danica. And I have a special relationship with her. She's an extraordinary athlete. She actually was on Elevator Pitch, our entrepreneur show, 2 seasons and coming on season 4 as well. But, you know, I have 3 teenage daughters. I'm going to start here. And as a father, they don't listen to me. I have this philosophy of being in contact with my kids every day. I have 19, 17, and 14-year-old daughters, 8-year-old son. Okay. So I said, look, I want to be in contact with you every day, either Snapchat or Instagram or call you. Or
you're already there.
Even in person, right? But just how much time will you give me every day? And I ended up negotiating 2 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So already from a business perspective,
right?
Family is business. Got it.
But the reason is I want to know what's going on every day in their life. And part of that is who they look up to, right? I always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Surround yourself with the right people and the right ideas. And I really am looking for great female role models. They're all athletes, but I don't think they get the difficulty that they in the past had to face, but even today, it encourages me that they don't get the difficulty, but I'd love for them to have a mentor like you that would give them advice. So for my 3 teenage daughters and all the other teenage daughters, what advice would you give them? Because we're all equal, but there's differences to be a female athlete.
Well, I think I want to touch on, you said that they don't really understand the challenges and the difficulties that maybe these female role models have. And that's not their fault. I think it actually lies within where would somebody find the challenges that Danica has faced? I mean, right now, or for a long time, her story has been told and she's had a lot of opportunity to tell it. But for the ones that are winning championships and doing great things, you have to give a lot more attention into their life and doing more than just following on Instagram. You know what I mean? And to be able to dig to find those challenges to learn from. So the advice that I would give to them, this is crazy because people ask me all the time who I looked up to as a female, trying to be a dominant female in a dominated male sport. And my answer was always, because it was true, I didn't have one. So, and it wasn't that I didn't pick one. I saw a void in the NHRA and professional drag racing at that time. So I'm a young girl and I'm like, there isn't a relevant, younger, middle-aged female professional driver. I feel like this sport needs it. I want to already race and be a pro driver, but recognize that. So I catered all of my energy. I'm like, I can be that person that doesn't exist right now in the sphere. So that doesn't mean that that they also can't look for those gaps. Instead of just looking to be somebody or following steps, also recognize, where they might fit in. Because no 2 people are ever going to be the same and follow the same steps and have the same challenges. But I feel like Danica being here and everything she's been through, I looked up to her. I looked up to her. I'm like, man, she's going through some stuff and there's no playbook for her.
Right.
She's out there doing it. And so she's paved a lot of roads for myself, for Ashley Forrest, for the other Forrest girls, for Alexis DeJoria. So yeah, I'm here to, talk about some of my things that might help somebody. But when you're inside that sphere, it's very difficult to see what the outside of that bubble looks like until somebody like you pierces it.
Right on. Well, and you look at those voids, which I think is an extraordinary thing to do as an entrepreneur, right? We're always looking for what's missing.
Yes.
Right? We don't always have to look for what's there. With those voids comes opportunity. And when you saw that void, not only did you see the opportunity in the sport, but as a unique brand within a unique sport, which is male dominated, there came all these opportunities. And I see your jacket says Sparkling Ice, which is one of our old clients, Warren Moon and I at Sports One Marketing great company. And I was there at the very beginning when they were filling a void in the market the same way and see opportunities. So it's kind of cool that I'm looking at a brand that had that philosophy, Sparkling Ice, and your brand, Leah Pritchett.
Thank you.
To do that. Where did you find that transition of, wait a second, this isn't necessarily all negative. I can take advantage of this and see what opportunities existed.
So I think it was a pure reflection of characteristics. So for me, I thrive on courage, doing things that are scary. And I don't mean just 330 miles an hour, but you know what, a personal achievement, whatever it may be. So having courage in the beginning, going, man, that would be, I only saw the positives of like, how cool would that, I want to do my sport, but to be that person. But switching over into Sparkling Ice, okay, it's real easy and real comfortable for endemic brands to be involved in whatever platform is, is their endemic. It takes a company to go out on a risk and play in that pool that nobody else is at. And that's why Sparkling Ice succeeds and has succeeded. I mean, what other, flavored sparkling water teas are out there? And of course, all the other ones are following it with where they go. But they took a risk and they get the reward. I take a risk, I get, you get the reward. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but when trying to relate that to everybody else and what's happening in their life is looking at any risk as a positive. So one thing, I forget where I had heard it.
Just credit to me then.
Okay, this came from you.
If you forget where it came from, just say, Dave Meltzer taught me this.
Okay, so that feeling that you have of like fear, right? Like,
ego-based emotion.
Right, I don't really know about that. Okay, and that feeling you have of like excitement. Okay, it's actually neurologically, it's the same feeling in your body. It's the way you look at it. So people ask me all the time, are you afraid of driving that fast? And you could, clearly and literally die at any second. And I'm like, man, I get that same adrenaline rush. But in my mind, I'm excited to do it. And you can literally change the way that you look at an opportunity or a situation. And I'm sure you talk about it all the time on mental perspective. But when you're looking at what it is you want to do in life. So 5 years ago, somebody told me, Leah, you need to be a brand. And I went to Cal State San Bernardino, graduated with communications and marketing degrees, dual majors in 4 years, understanding marketing. And you have to take yourself, and for my position, I had to take myself out of me. I had to act like I was a different entity than myself, which is difficult to do.
I got a book about that behind me. It's called Alter Ego.
It is. In order to be successful at it, you take the humbleness aside and you run it as if you are your own client. So I'm like, okay, perfect. So started developing a brand. I've been through 3 logos since then. I really like the one I have now. And at the same time, my thought process was the larger my brand can be, the more partners that I can attract for the team that I'm racing for, so we can basically have funds to go race.
Right.
All of it comes from that pure passion. Circling it back to your daughters and anybody else that's listening, the passion part needs to be the nucleus. So every day in and day out, every phone call, every email, all that always has to go back to what is that purpose? What is that why? What is your why? Even when you're asking people they want to work out, well, what's your why? Because you're always going to revert back to it. So that's where I'm getting at in 5 years of developing a brand. I've had a lot of challenges with it.
Right.
Because I don't own my race car or the team or the operation. I am also an employee, which I think a lot of people think of entrepreneurs as you've got to be the next Steve Jobs and you've got to be the next big thing solely by yourself and everything has to be your idea. Well, you can be an entrepreneur while working for other people. And
absolutely. In fact, there's so many innovation groups within huge corporations now that I coach people that are new entrepreneurs. I said, one of the best ways to figure out is to use somebody else's money. And I'm not saying go and raise the money because that's another technique, but there's tons of companies that have innovation departments that are these entrepreneurial groups within a multi-billion-dollar corporation, which is basically what you do in racing. Now, one of the interesting things I find about female athletes as I'm analyzing as a father, right? Worried about my own children and figuring out as a male and grew up with 5 boys and 1 girl, I'm part of the problem.
Okay.
But I find it difficult because it's such a conflict as a female athlete in a competitive sport, right? You go 0 to 100 in less than a second.
Yep.
Those guys didn't believe me, by the way, when I told them it's less than a second. You know, Bradley, my publicist who likes to race, he's like, dude, no way. I'm like, seriously, less than a second. So that's a rocket ship speed.
Quicker.
Now, right.
It's quicker than
Even
that.
better. No, which is awesome. But now here's the conflict I don't like about sports. You're in such this chasm of, okay, hopefully you'll take it as a compliment, but you're a beautiful woman. You have a brand that can benefit from being a beautiful woman, but you're a hyper competitive athlete who actually has to compete. We'll get to it with your husband even. Right. But yet men, they sit there on one side, they feel threatened.
Absolutely.
Right?
They do.
And then on the other side, they're like, oh, you know, she's so beautiful, this or that. But then when you put yourself to market yourself as beautiful, like Danica has, and then they demean you and say, oh, well, what's she trying to do? That's not fair to me. It's like if I'm Tom Brady, which I wish I was. I'm
Congratulations
a beautiful man.
on the race to Super Bowl.
Thank you. I'm a great athlete and a beautiful man. And he goes and lies in his Ugg boots, you know, in his shorts. And, you know, my wife, you know, she's like, oh, he's on my list. I'm cool with it. Like, I don't diminish him. But on the field, they don't think there's any conflict. How do you deal with, as a brand, right? This is an entrepreneur show. There is that reality conflict that some people don't want you to be beautiful and other people don't want you to be an athlete.
I think intrinsically it goes back to being able to prove people wrong. And that's a trait of mine that my dad had instilled in me. And actually, I just wanted to prove him wrong because he thought I would never make it.
Nice. I have that too.
So putting up those blinders, because if you look in that one direction, then you're going to follow it and then you're going to believe it and then you're not going to be successful. I've experienced it where I hear it online, I hear it in person. My competitors say it behind my back. Those wussies won't say it to my face. But you're just here and because you're beautiful and marketing. Okay, well, I don't know if you've been asleep for 20 years, but that's cool. And so you just keep going.
I love that.
And whatever your truth is, that will always be that's always going to shine through, and that's going to filter and be the cream of the crop. So to get past that is making sure, and this was what sucks about being a female in a male-dominated sport. You cannot be as good as them. You have to be better than them to justify to keep overlapping. You're only here because you're pretty. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, I guess you did an okay job. You deserve to be in the seat, but you only have a sponsor because Sparkling Eyes fits with you. No, we do a really good job on our promoting process and our marketing. It fits the brand. We sell a lot of product. What are you doing over there? Nothing.
Yeah. And I sit on the Olympic Committee board for USA Shooting, and one of my favorite things about shooting is women are actually better than men. They're better than men. And even moreover, historically, at the very first time when in the competition, women and men were in the same competition, and I forget her name, but beat the man. And they actually came up with these screwed up rules. And they're like, no, it's a tie. And then when they made it a tie, they came up with the screwed up rules and they gave him the gold medal. The coolest thing is that gentleman, and I'll get these names for you, but that gentleman pulled her up onto the gold medal stand with him.
Oh, that is classy.
Which is why I was so fired up to be a part of, because I'm not a shooter, but I want to be on the Olympic Committee board. And I said, you know what, this is for me for that reason. Now, one of the other conflicts that you have is your husband's on a competitive team and you're married.
Yes.
And how do you reconcile, you know, wanting to win, but also wanting your husband to do well?
Well, I'll touch on that in just a moment.
Yeah.
Going back to the married part, I'm not going to say which team or which person or sponsor, but we were doing photo shoots beginning of the year and great production and all that. And I saw the proof right before everything went to print. And I'm like, where's my wedding ring? They photoshopped my wedding ring out.
No way.
Absolutely. And I went to the agency and I said, hey, I'm pretty sure. I know the last time I took my wedding ring off.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, we just thought that would, it would be much better marketing and as you'd be more desirable towards the general fan base. And I said that there's a lot of decisions that you guys make for me. This is my decision. If I'm going to lose fans because I'm married, you know what? You weren't the right fan anyway then. You don't like what we're doing.
Tell you too, you know, being married myself, I think more women like me because I'm married. You're more desirable, like create a relationship. But
right.
I get that. God, what are we falling asleep for 20 years, like you said? That's incredible.
And so I'm
without asking you.
It would have been one thing to ask.
Of course,
in a
you can
conversation
ask.
piece.
Do you want this for this reason? You want to market to these people?
Right. Maybe I would have been like, who knows?
Exactly.
So yes, my husband Gary races for a competing team. I have competitors that are on my same team with Schumacher, but this one is by all means direct competition. So Don Schumacher's the largest race team in NHRA, the most wins, with the most history. This team that my husband raced for, Steve Torrance, started as a single car team, buying parts from everybody else. Like we manufacture our own parts, DSM, and it's supposed to be like the underdog little guy versus the big dog. Okay, that's not really how it is. It's a very successful independent family that's able to spend more money than we are actually, and get all the right parts and pieces. Now, this is where it's been tricky. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. I've been competitive for championship caliber for 2.5. So our time 7 years together has been like we hadn't really been neck and neck. So in the past year, until we get to the countdown, it's really good. Now, what I mean by that is we start in February and we run 18 races until Labor Day, and the remaining 6 until November are like our playoffs. Then you shoot for the championships. You have to qualify to get in the playoffs. And if he wins in the regular season, I win in the regular season, man, all we care about is that we race each other in the final. You get into the playoffs and like, no, I want you out first round. You do not need to be collecting points. I don't care how much bonus money that means for you over there. Like
that's a whole other issue, right? Your pocketbook is tied into this.
Absolutely. It definitely is. The more rounds that you go, the more bonus.
So you don't want you all the way to the very end?
No, as in when we get them.
Once you want to be 1 and 2 coming into the championship.
We'd like that, but in last year's case, they were so far ahead.
Oh wow!
By the time we got into the playoffs with points, that they needed to be chopped off like immediately.
I love that.
And it was
forget the money. I just want to win.
So I'm in my car, suited, ready to rip. And I mean, I got to be as focused as possible. There's changes that happen throughout the day. Track conditions, what engine we've got in the car, what program, what tune setup, all that. Imagine seeing your spouse, your significant other, literally 20 feet away doing their job. In my mind, I don't even have to think about it anymore. Like he doesn't even exist because I care so much about our car and our team and being 1,000% in that I literally won't see him from the time 6:30 in the morning we leave the Holiday Inn Express or wherever we're at till 11 p.m. when we meet back there. We're roommates.
Wow. I'm not sure I could even be. My wife is built like Danica, and she should be in racing because she's super competitive. I truly believe that if we had the same situation and I was a driver and my wife was on the other team, that she would do something like intentionally file divorce papers just to make me get in my head, or like walk by, or even worse stuff. Like she like literally would complete. Does your husband do anything to distract you?
No, because going back to kind of a yin yang, you want what's best for your partner always. Yeah. And so if we're not winning, I want them winning. And if you take the point situation out. Now, going back to entrepreneurship, he's also a driver. Has been a driver for 20 years, as long as I have.
Yours better than him.
No? I have just had opportunities to become a professional, and he has not yet.
Oh, wow.
So he races at a sub-professional level called an alcohol funny car. And we said, you know what?
That's a Jägermeister sponsored car, right? Alcohol funny car.
No, it should be the Patron one. Or, in Gary's case, yeah, he does love his Jaeger. Jaeger, where you at?
I'm very close with Jaeger, so have Gary call me. I worked for Sidney Frank for years.
So behind that was, this was last year, we're going to crush this. Gary entered a race, the U.S. Nationals, his first national event ever, and qualified well, went rounds. I'm racing my second car. I won that race, going rounds in the fuel car. Our goal is for Gary to be able to be a professional driver right next to me. And I'm nothing off the board here. What would be great is his name to be known. I could take the year off eventually to have a child.
Yeah.
You can't race being pregnant and then come back into the sport. Like, we want to kill it. And it all starts with our passion is racing. We're both trying to raise money to be able to race and eventually against each other and build our life here.
That's awesome. Last question. You're a woman who has found her own frequency, and that's what's made you successful. That's my perception. It might have been driven to prove your dad wrong, but I think everyone's trying to prove something that is highly successful, right? I had the same aspiration as you. My dad never said he was proud of me, and I wanted to be richer than my dad, better than my dad, and it drove me. I know Reggie Bush was the same. What legacy do you want to leave when it's all said and done? You know, you have this great brand, you have a great future, both you and your husband within, this highly male dominated sport still today, but what legacy do you want to leave?
Man, that's a wonderful question. Difficult one. I think it would be if somebody becomes successful off of watching me. If somebody my legacy is to inspire people that would have otherwise not been inspired.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Empowering others, to empower others. Sometimes I'm on these and I'm like, I wish I could go an hour like Rogan, like this show's only 20 minutes, but you're incredible. And anything I can do to be of service, any brands that you want introductions to, I think you are a powerful brand and force to be reckoned with. And I'm going to come watch your race since you're not too far away.
I appreciate that. And being on this show is amazing. This is it's humbling. I'm very honored. This is incredible.
Compliments will get you everywhere here on The Playbook. Leah Pritchett with Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, The Playbook.